Aditi and I met a long time ago, 10 years ago now. We met at a book club that focused on queer stories.
Once we actually started dating, Susan quit her job. She moved out of her house, moved into my apartment in Bombay, and we got a dog.
For same-sex couples like Aditi and Susan, getting married in India was once a far-fetched idea. Now they are part of a group petitioning the Supreme Court for the right to marry.
I think very strongly and very much so that we're ready. And I do feel like society is ready as well. In being petitioners here, we're trying to do our little bit in being brave ourselves.
But India remains a deeply conservative society, and the court's ruling on marriage equality will be watched closely around the world. The question really is this: will the world's largest democracy open the door to a new LGBTQ revolution?
A couple of years ago, when we decided to have children, is when we thought that marriage would be a logical next step for us. In doing that, in having and raising a child now, we realize more so the lack of a lot of things that we don't have today. Legal rights over each other, the ability to, have a bank account, to own assets together, to be a legal parent to a child.
India's fight for LGBTQ rights has come a long way, thanks in part to a combination of grassroots lobbying and aggressive litigation. A favorable judgment now would more than double the number of people globally with marriage equality rights, eventually cementing inheritance, adoption and other protections to 1.4 billion Indians. And lawyers are optimistic. They believe they have strong legal grounds for extending basic protections to the LGBTQ community.
We really believe this to be an issue of fundamental rights that have to be guaranteed to all people. And we feel that there is judicial precedent and there is room in the Special Marriage Act to interpret the grant of these rights. So it's early days, but we are cautiously hopeful and optimistic.
A positive ruling on same-sex marriage in India would have implications across the world, including in countries like Thailand and Greece, where similar debates are gaining momentum. For Aditi and Susan, a positive court order would offer them social protections that could change their lives.
Had we been a straight couple, this wouldn't even have been a conversation. It probably would have happened far more easily.
For me, at a very personal level, I expect the highest court in my country to recognize me as an equal citizen.
Some members of the LGBT community say marriage rights will lay the foundation to a more equitable society. Sumant Jaikrishnan is a contemporary Indian artist.
The ruling for same-sex marriage is very important. It equalizes you in the eyes of the law. Same-sex marriage is the first step. But the next step, which is actual freedom, is when there are civil rights so that you can be partners, couples, and you don't have to get married. Because getting married does put you in a box. And some people would resent yet another box being given to you. I do.
Sumant lived through a different time, when being openly gay was extremely rare.
You grow up thinking that you're deeply wrong. That's what's imposed on you by the world.
Until recently, a draconian law known as Section 377 criminalized sex between men. It was only finally repealed in 2018.
The very fact that there was an Article 377, you were inherently a deviant and you were illegal and you were not in a space of strength or power. You were always on the back foot, and anyone who wanted to take advantage of that could at any point of time, And that's what I grew up with till all my life.
Many Indians still object to homosexuality on moral grounds. In fact, India's government has told the court it opposes same-sex marriage. And in pockets of the country, especially outside of bigger cities, the consequences of living openly can be severe, from harassment and social isolation to frightening vulnerability to sexual abuse.
in our petitions in the High Court, the opposition has typically and traditionally been that this is not a part of Indian culture. First of all, I don't think it's something that outside Indian culture. I believe Indian culture to be very tolerant, and I believe the Indian people to be very rights oriented and to be understanding of everyone's rights.
You know, the crazy thing is that India culturally is very fluid, very ambiguous, very all-embracing, and I can tell you that from experience. The Indian mind space is a very lovely space. It's a very accepting space.
Regardless of the outcome in the Supreme Court, Aditi and Susan believe marriage equality will come to India sooner or later.
There's been such a vast change in everything, and we're immensely lucky to be able to witness that. And you know, there are challenges for sure.
A lot of us grew up feeling that no, we're never going to come out, and that's a debilitating fear. And I'm hoping that petitions like this, communities like this, movements like this is going to ensure that people in this country don't have that fear anymore.